Hey everyone, how's it going? So what am I working on now? Well, I got this 2017 Honda Accord with a 2.4 liter. It's a rainy Saturday morning. It's kind of cool. Just kind of like one of those going to sleep in days. It is what it is. Anyway, customer dropped it off at my house, and he says he needs a crank sensor. It's the only information I got. It says he needs a crank sensor. I got in it. I started it up. No check engine light. So obviously he's having an issue telling him that somebody told him it needs a crank sensor. Why, I don't know. But I did go into it and I scanned it, and let me show you what I got. So I have a P0339, crank sensor circuit intermittent interruption. Now the possibilities are a few things. Could you have a bad PCM? Yeah, sure you could. Kind of unusual, but yeah, you can. More than likely, it's a faulty crank sensor, but a lot of times with a crank sensor, you don't get intermittent. Usually it turns out to be a connection issue, or a wiring issue. Normally connection. But it's not to say I've never seen one be just a crank sensor. I have. But he asked to replace the crank sensor. I don't think he wanted to go crazy trying to look at everything. And I got, like I said, I got nothing to go on. I mean, the car runs fine. I just took it up the road. It sat overnight in my driveway. I started up this morning, no issues, no check engine light. I drove it up to about 70 miles an hour. Drove fine. So, other than that, that's the only information I got. So, I'm going to actually go pick up a crank sensor for this, and I'm going to stick a crank sensor in it. While I'm there, I'm going to look at the connection and everything else. So, today we're going to see what's involved in changing a crank sensor on a 2.4 Honda. Because honestly, I'm not sure. Guess I'm going to find out, though. This thing doesn't have a timing belt. All of a sudden I started thinking, I'm like, wait a minute, some of the older Hondas, they had crank sensor, but you have to take the timing belt off because it was actually mounted behind the crank pulley. But I'm going way back. I think I'm going back, 25 years ago. But yeah, so let's do that. Let's go get a crank sensor for this thing, and let's go ahead and install that. Okay, so here we are in the home shop underneath the hood. Yeah, set up my little light here real quick. So you can see. So I'm not actually sure where this is located. This is a new one. Oh, thought I had my light on. And I'm not quite sure where this is located. I think it's in the back of the motor. But you can tell this is an externally mounted because it has an O-ring. So it goes from the outside through the block. And that's how it's mounted. Anyway, so here you can see in the front of the motor, this thing's got a valve cover gasket leaking down the front. That should be fixed. It's the first time I've ever seen this car. But usually, I look down. Oops, sorry about that. I try to look down and see if I could see where it's mounted. I don't see it anywhere up front here. So it's got to be up underneath. So what I'm going to do, sorry about the light. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jack it up, put it up on jack stands, crawl underneath, see if I can't find it. If I had to venture a guess, it's in the back of the motor, probably close to the flex plate, in the torque converter area, probably somewhere over there. Sometimes, like Chrysler used to do it, they mount them actually in the tranny, like on the old 604s and stuff like that, or they mount them to the tranny to read off of the flywheel, flex plate, whatever. So let me get this thing jacked up and let's see what we say. Okay, so we're jacked up and we're underneath the car, and you see this plate right here? There's a 10 millimeter up there. You got to take that out, and the 10 millimeter up there. And once you get that out, the crank sensor should be it behind it. I mean, I'm following this wiring harness, and I believe that's where it is. I did replace a motor on one of these way, way, way back in the day. It was at the body shop. It was a collision car, and we wound up having to put an engine in it too. And it's ringing a little bit of a bell, not much. But yeah, let me get those two bolts out. It's kind of impossible for me to film just having this thing jacked up. I did crack these free just now with a 10 millimeter wrench. So they should come right out. Man, I don't have an incredible amount of room. I have a jack and a jack stand holding this up. And it's up as high as both will go. So I'm kind of limited on my room. As you can see, somebody's put a starter in this thing. That starter is not that old. So I was looking originally thinking, could they have hit the wiring right there? But I don't see anything. Just putting the bolts down to the side. And you got the metal cover here. And you should have the connector basically right behind it. Can't even get over there to see it. Not really. There you get a better view of it. All right, let me get this metal cover out of the way. Basically, I got the phone like right up to my face just about because there's not a lot of room underneath here, especially for me being my size. Okay, so with the connector out, I'm inspecting the connector itself. The connector itself looks fine. The wiring itself looks fine, and I can follow the wiring all the way up to where it goes kind of behind the intake manifold, and nothing looks like it's been hit or damaged. So there's the crank sensor itself. I'm going to have to get a socket on that and get that 10 millimeter out that holds it in place up there. Okay, so I cracked it free. It's a 1/4 inch drive. And I mean, really, there's not a lot to this. Just in a little bit of a difficult spot. And if I was a smaller guy, it might not be so bad. For me, a little difficult. A little tight. So now, I'm just going to grab the sensor, and the sensor does move. You probably can't see any of that because I'm in the way. But I'm going to have to wiggle this and get it out. I'm going to have to use 2 hands, but that's pretty much what's involved. So let me do that and let me get that out of there. Okay, a little bit of a pain in the neck, but I finally got it. If you're trying to take a crank sensor out and it's not coming out easy, take your time, be patient. I've seen people break these things trying to get them out, and then you really got a problem because it's stuck inside the motor through that hole up there. Hold on. Oops, sorry. See if I can get in so you can actually see what I'm talking about. It's just in such a bad spot for me to show you. There it is. But yeah, I've seen people break these things off inside the block on different vehicles, not necessarily one of these. But once that happens, then you've really got an issue. Now the new one, what I'm going to do is, so there's a little bit of oil on this. There's also a little bit of metal filings on it, but that's normal. I'm going to take a little bit of oil that's on here, wipe it onto the new one, and then stick the new one in place. I don't know if I'm going to be able to film any of this. Like I said, it's very tight under here. Okay, so with it installed, now I just got to hook the wiring harness and everything else up. When you're tightening that bolt, remember, it's only got a 10 millimeter head on it, so it's a 6 millimeter size of the actual threaded portion of the bolt. It's not a big bolt. You don't have to tighten the bejesus out of it to get it in place. Just, make sure it's, like when the bolt itself stops turning, just go a little bit more. You don't have to go nuts. Make sure it's tight, make sure it's bottomed out. So now, reverse procedure to install. Just going to hook the wiring harness up, clip that thing in place, wipe the oil down, be done with it. All right, so I'm back in the car right now. I cleared the codes out of it, and I got the scanner hooked up to it. Crank sensor and cam sensor. Crank sensor, CKP, Charlie Kilo Pluto. I don't know how the military does that. And then CMP for cam. So CKP crank, CMP cam. Weird thing is, this actually doesn't really have anything for crank, which for some reason the manufacturer might not supply it. Let me just show you real quick. So I'm just going through the data list. Oh, actually, let's go back here. I mean, they give you a lot of things. I mean, they show, cylinder crank speed, but they don't show let's just do this. Let's combine. How are you going to do anything with that? You're not. Why does 3 show a little more dramatic? Who knows? I mean, the car's got 130,000 miles on it. now? Yeah. I mean, I don't know why 3 is showing a little more dramatic than all the other ones. Couldn't tell you. No idea. It runs fine. But you're not going to do anything with that. Okay, so let's go back. Fortunately, it goes all the way back to the beginning here. So let's take those out of the equation. So you have CMP, which is cam. You have CMP2 and CMPB and CMP. So all of those have to do with the cam. Now it's a dual overhead cam, so they might call one of them is called 2 and the other one is called B for whatever reasons. Whatever reason the manufacturer does that. But here you have CKP no pulse, CKP noise, and CKP pulsar. Facebook learn. Okay. Let's go to OK. And you have nothing. You have no information at all. So let's just go to combine real quick. And OK. Oops, wait, please choose. At least one item. Huh, so you can't even choose it. Every once in a blue moon, that'll give you one. Why is it not allowing me to choose? Combine. Yeah, see, it won't even let me combine them because there's nothing there as far as like an information, I would assume. Kind of odd. Let me just see if it shows anything like engine RPM. So you got misfires. Well, we got engine speed. 720. See, now here it allows you to highlight it. So as you can see, it's pretty steady. I got no dropouts, no nothing. I don't know. You know, unfortunately, like I said, I just don't have a heck of a lot to go on here. What could be the problem? I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm going to replace the crank sensor. Now, one thing I did notice is on the passenger seat, I believe this is from AutoZone. Talking about Duralast parts there on the second page. Talking about the crank sensor itself. So, I don't know. I'm able to get a hold of the customer, but he wanted a crank sensor, so I put a crank sensor in it. And everything's looking good. I'm just going to leave this alone like this. So, we're going to find out what happens. Yeah, so if I know more, I'll let you know. But I guess that's it for right now. So throwing a crank sensor in, not terrible. About an hour's worth of work, but not terrible. But yeah, so all right. Hopefully getting something out of my videos. If you are, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. All right, guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.